On the night the shadow first appeared, there were no storms, no power outages, no dramatic signs in the sky. The church lights burned steadily. The candles at the altar flickered, as they always did. And yet, 3 different parishioners would later swear that something was standing behind the altar. Not a person, not a trick of light, but a shape. Tall, black, still. According to church records, the incident began quietly in the autumn of 2019 at St. Bartholomew's Parish, a modest brick church on the edge of a
In these
small
uncertain
industrial
times,
town.
let faith be your guiding light.
It was not known for controversy.
No darkness is too great for the light of
Attendance was
hope.
steady, but unremarkable. The clergy rotated in and out without incident. There had been no history of reported hauntings, no whispered rumors of possession. Until Daniel Reyes. Daniel was 34 years old, a lifelong Catholic, and by all accounts a reserved, disciplined man. He worked as an accountant for a local shipping company. He lived alone in a narrow townhouse 2 blocks from the church. Neighbors described him as polite, if distant. He attended Mass every Sunday, sometimes kneeling long after others had left. The first report came after a Wednesday evening service. Daniel approached Father Miguel Herrera as the congregation thinned. His face was pale. Witnesses later reported that his hands were trembling, though his voice remained controlled. "There's someone standing behind you during the Eucharist," he said. Father Miguel assumed he meant an altar server or perhaps a late-arriving sacristan. "No," Daniel insisted. "Behind the altar, in the shadows. Tall. I thought it was a man at first, but it doesn't move." The priest gently dismissed the concern. The lighting behind the altar was uneven. Shadows often stretched across the stone wall depending on candle placement. He suggested Daniel might be fatigued. Daniel did not argue. He nodded, apologized, and left. But the following Sunday, he returned with the same expression, pale, unsettled, eyes fixed not on the priest, but on the empty space behind him. After Mass, he did not approach. He simply stood in the final pew, staring toward the altar long after the sanctuary lights were dimmed. That night, Daniel did not sleep. According to later interviews conducted by diocesan investigators, Daniel began keeping a journal around this time. The entries were methodical at first. He described the shadow in precise language. Height approximately 6.5 feet. 1 entry read. No discernible features. Not flat against the wall. It stands forward. It has depth. He wrote that the shadow did not cast from any visible source. It did not change position when candles were moved. It remained directly behind the altar, slightly to the left of the crucifix. 3 days later, he added another note. It watches the priest, not the congregation. There were no immediate signs of psychological instability. Daniel's co-workers described him as quiet but focused. He met deadlines. He engaged in normal conversation. He did not mention the shadow outside the church, but his behavior during Mass began to change. He stopped kneeling during certain prayers. His eyes remained open when others bowed their heads. Witnesses later reported that he would occasionally turn his head slowly, as if tracking movement no one else could see.
In these uncertain times, let faith be your guiding light.
During the early
No
morning
darkness
service,
is too great for the light of
an elderly
hope.
parishioner named Maria Delgado fainted in the 3rd pew. As others rushed to help her, she reportedly whispered something that caught Father Miguel's attention. "There's something behind you," she murmured. "It's taller than the cross." Maria later claimed she saw a dark outline during the consecration. She assumed at first that her eyesight was failing, but she insisted the shape was not attached to the wall. It stood independently. 2 reports could be coincidence. 3 began to feel different. Within weeks, 2 more parishioners described similar sightings. None of them spoke to one another beforehand. Each claimed the shape was visible only during specific moments of the Mass, particularly during the elevation of the host. Father Miguel reviewed security footage from the sanctuary. The camera, mounted high in the corner, captured the altar clearly. The footage showed nothing unusual. No distortion. No figure. He considered the possibility of suggestions spreading through the congregation. Religious environments can amplify expectation. Shadows can be misinterpreted, especially under candlelight. But Daniel's condition was deteriorating. He began arriving at the church hours before services. The sacristan found him kneeling alone in the darkened sanctuary one afternoon, staring at the altar. "It moves when you're not looking directly at it," Daniel whispered. The sacristan reported that his tone was not dramatic. It was observational.
Calm.
As if describing a minor change in furniture placement. At home, Daniel's journal entries became fragmented. "It stands closer now. It leans forward during the gospel. It does not blink." He claimed the shadow had begun appearing outside the church. First in reflections, in the glass of a storefront window, in the dark screen of his television before he turned it on, always behind him, always just out of direct sight. Daniel scheduled an appointment with a neurologist. According to medical records later reviewed by the diocese, he underwent a full neurological evaluation. MRI scans showed no abnormalities, no tumors, no lesions. Blood work returned normal. He was screened for sleep disorders and stress-induced hallucinations. The attending physician noted mild anxiety, but no evidence of psychosis. Daniel did not resist medical explanations. He wanted one. But the shadow persisted. On November 3rd, during the evening mass, something changed. Several witnesses independently described the same moment. As Father Miguel lifted the chalice, Daniel stood abruptly from his pew. His chair scraped loudly against the stone floor. He was staring at the altar. His breathing was audible even from several rows away. After the service, he approached the priest again. "It smiled," he said. Father Miguel felt a chill he would later struggle to
In these
explain.
uncertain times,
He
let
asked
faith be
Daniel
your
what he
guiding
meant.
light.
"It
No
doesn't have a
darkness is
face,"
too great for the light
Daniel
of hope.
replied. But I felt it smile. There was no laughter, no theatrics, only certainty. The priest contacted the diocesan office for guidance. While the church is cautious about claims of supernatural activity, protocol requires preliminary evaluation when multiple witnesses report similar phenomena. A psychological consultation was arranged with a Catholic therapist experienced in cases involving religious distress. During sessions, Daniel remained coherent. He did not claim voices were speaking to him. He did not describe intrusive thoughts unrelated to the shadow. He maintained his job. He paid his bills. He answered questions logically. But he refused to sit with his back to a doorway. And he stopped sleeping entirely by mid-November. Dark circles formed beneath his eyes. His weight dropped noticeably. Coworkers reported he began working through lunch breaks, staring at his computer screen without typing. One evening, a neighbor heard Daniel shouting inside his townhouse. Not screaming, shouting. When police conducted a wellness check, they found him alone, sitting at his kitchen table. "There's someone standing behind you," he told the officer calmly. The officer turned. There was nothing there. According to the report, Daniel did not appear intoxicated. He was cooperative, but he refused to explain further. The parish council met privately with Father Miguel in early December. Concerns were raised about the spreading fear among parishioners. Attendance had begun to decline slightly. Whispers circulated after services. Was the church being tested? Was something unclean attached to the sanctuary? Father Miguel insisted there was no physical evidence of disturbance. He ordered the altar area inspected for structural issues that might create unusual shadows. Lighting fixtures were replaced. Candles repositioned. The shadow, according to witnesses, remained. Then came the night that shifted the tone from anxiety to something darker. It was December 14th, during rehearsal for the Christmas Vigil. Only a handful of choir members and staff were present. Daniel had not been scheduled to attend, but he arrived unannounced and sat in the back pew. Halfway through rehearsal, the organ malfunctioned. A low sustained note echoed through the sanctuary, unprompted by any key. The organist removed her hands. The note continued for nearly 6 seconds before stopping abruptly. Daniel stood. "It's closer tonight," he said. The sacristan later testified that Daniel's voice did not sound like his own. It was lower, slower. As Father Miguel stepped down from the altar to approach him, Daniel's gaze remained fixed behind the crucifix. And for the first time, Father Miguel felt it. Not saw it, felt it. A pressure in the air behind him.
In these uncertain times, let faith be your guiding light.
Too near.
No darkness
He
is too
turned.
great for the light
There
of
was
hope.
nothing visible, But the temperature in the sanctuary had dropped sharply. The breath of the choir members became faintly visible in the cold. The heating system was functioning normally. Daniel began to laugh softly. Not hysterically. Not loudly. Just enough for it to echo. "It doesn't like when you ignore it," he said. That night, Father Miguel requested formal diocesan review. The bishop authorized a preliminary spiritual assessment. Not an exorcism, only an investigation. Within days, an experienced cleric known for handling complex pastoral cases arrived at St. Bartholomew's. His name was Father Antonio Ruiz. He did not announce himself dramatically. He wore plain black clerical clothing. He carried no visible relics or instruments. He introduced himself to Daniel privately in the parish office. According to Father Antonio's later written statement, Daniel appeared exhausted but lucid. He described the shadow with consistent detail. He did not embellish. He did not speculate about demons or names. He only described presence. "It stands behind the altar during the consecration," Daniel repeated. "And when you turn your back, it steps forward." Father Antonio asked him one final question. "Why do you think it's there?" Daniel hesitated for the first time. His lips trembled slightly. "It's waiting," he said. "For what?" the priest asked. Daniel's eyes shifted slowly toward the closed office door. "For you to invite it closer." And at that exact moment, 3 loud knocks struck the office door from the outside. Slow, deliberate. Even though no one else was in the hallway, the 3 knocks echoed in the small parish office with a weight that felt deliberate. Father Antonio stood immediately and opened the door. The hallway was empty. The overhead lights hummed faintly. The parish bulletin board hung undisturbed. No footsteps retreated down the corridor. No doors closed. The church had already been locked for the evening. Daniel remained seated. He did not look surprised. "It follows you too," he said quietly. Father Antonio stepped back into the office and shut the door with measured control. He had served in rural missions, in inner-city parishes, and once in a hospital wing where a patient had claimed angels were living in the ceiling tiles. He was not easily shaken. But something about the timing of the knocks, 3 slow impacts spaced evenly apart, pressed against his composure. He did not acknowledge it directly. Instead, he began the formal line of questioning required in cases where preternatural activity is suspected. The church does not assume possession. It eliminates every other explanation first. "Do you hear voices?" he asked. "No." "Do you feel commanded to harm yourself or others?" "No." "Have you engaged in occult practices?"
In these uncertain times, let faith be your guiding light. No darkness is too great for the light of hope.
Another pause. "I don't know," Daniel said. "It started at the altar. But now it stands behind me when I pray." Over the next 2 weeks, Father Antonio observed Daniel closely. He attended Mass discreetly, positioning himself in various pews to watch both Daniel and the altar. The first Sunday he attended, nothing unusual occurred. At least, nothing visible. The sanctuary lights were steady. The crucifix hung motionless. The air felt ordinary. But during the elevation of the host, Father Antonio felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. A pressure, faint but distinct. It was not a draft. It was not imagination. He later described it in his written report as a density in the air localized behind the altar, inconsistent with surrounding space. He did not see a figure, but Daniel did. Daniel's breathing grew shallow. His hands gripped the pew in front of him. His lips moved in silent prayer, but his eyes were wide and fixed. After Mass, Father Antonio asked him what had happened. "It stepped forward when you raised it," Daniel whispered. "It almost reached you." "Reached me how?" "With its arm." "Did you see an arm?" "No. But I felt the movement." Father Antonio requested permission from the bishop to bless the sanctuary formally. The ritual was simple and measured. Holy water was sprinkled along the altar steps. Psalms were recited. A crucifix was placed beneath the altar cloth. Daniel attended the blessing but remained at the back of the church. That night, he called Father Antonio at 2:17 a.m. "It's in my bedroom," he said. Father Antonio arrived within 20 minutes. Daniel's townhouse was dimly lit, curtains drawn tightly. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows. Daniel stood in the center of his bedroom, pointing toward the corner near the closet. "It stands there when I lie down," he said. It leans forward. The room temperature was unusually cold. Father Antonio conducted a brief prayer of protection. As he recited the Latin invocation, Daniel began to tremble, not violently, but with controlled resistance, as if pushing against invisible pressure. "It doesn't like that," Daniel murmured. "Doesn't like what?" "The words." His voice deepened slightly on the final syllable. Father Antonio stopped mid-prayer. "Daniel," he said calmly, "repeat after me." He began the Apostles' Creed. Daniel repeated the first few lines clearly. Then he faltered. His jaw tightened. His teeth clenched audibly. When Father Antonio said, "I believe in the Holy Spirit," Daniel's body jerked backward as if pulled by a rope tied to his spine. He did not fall, but his eyes
In these uncertain times, let faith be your guiding light. No darkness is too great for the light of hope.
There was no scream, only silence. The priest completed the prayer alone. Daniel collapsed into a seated position on the floor, breathing heavily. "It touched me," he whispered. "Where?" "Between my shoulders." A medical examination the following day revealed no bruising, no marks. Neurological scans remained normal. Psychiatric evaluation found no evidence of dissociation or delusion beyond the singular fixation on the shadow. The bishop authorized a preliminary deliverance prayer, not a full solemn exorcism, but a controlled rite conducted under observation. The first session took place in a private chapel within the parish complex. Present were Father Antonio, Father Miguel, a deacon, and a licensed psychologist assigned by the diocese to monitor Daniel's mental state. The chapel was small, lit by 2 standing lamps and a single candle near the tabernacle. Daniel sat in a wooden chair at the center of the room. The prayers began softly. For the first 20 minutes, there was no visible reaction. Then Daniel's breathing changed. His chest rose sharply. His fingers curled inward. His gaze shifted to the far wall, specifically to the shadow cast by the standing lamp. "It's here," he said. "Daniel," Father Antonio instructed gently, "focus on my voice." But Daniel was no longer looking at him. The shadow on the wall behind the priest appeared elongated. This was later debated in reports. Some present claimed the lamp's angle had not changed. Others believed tension was influencing perception. But the psychologist present noted in her written evaluation that the shadow's outline did not correspond to Father Antonio's posture at that moment. It extended above his head, and slightly to the side. Daniel began to laugh softly. The same restrained, echoing laugh heard during choir rehearsal weeks earlier. "It's standing behind you again," he said. Father Miguel turned slowly. There was only the wall. The prayers intensified. Father Antonio recited the litany of the saints, his voice firm but controlled. At the name of Saint Michael, Daniel's chair scraped violently backward across the chapel floor. No one touched him. His body stiffened. His neck arched at an unnatural angle. Not impossible, but strained. "Leave," Father Antonio commanded quietly, not shouting, not dramatic. "You have no authority here." Daniel's lips moved. But the voice that came was layered, his own tone beneath something heavier. "We were invited," it said. The room fell still. No one had spoken an invitation. Father Antonio stepped closer. "By whom?" he asked. Daniel's eyes fixed on the crucifix above the tabernacle. "By silence," the voice replied. The psychologist later insisted Daniel could have produced
In these
the
uncertain
vocal
times, let
distortion
faith be your
voluntarily.
guiding light.
But she
No
admitted
darkness
the
is
timing
too great
of
for the light of
physiological
hope.
changes, heart rate spikes, muscle rigidity, occurred before the shift in voice. The session ended abruptly when Daniel lost consciousness. He awoke 10 minutes later disoriented but calm. "I couldn't move," he said. "It was standing behind all of you." From that night forward, activity escalated. Daniel reported waking with a sensation of breath near his ear. He described seeing the shadow not only behind himself, but behind strangers in public spaces, on the bus, at the grocery store. "It stands closest to priests," he noted in his journal. Sleep deprivation worsened his condition. He began experiencing brief lapses in time, minutes unaccounted for. His co-workers reported finding him staring at a blank document for extended periods. And then came the incident that removed all doubt in Father Antonio's mind. It was during the second deliverance session. The same chapel. The same witnesses. Daniel was calmer at the start. His hands rested loosely in his lap. Father Antonio placed a small relic of Saint Benedict on the table beside him. As the priest began reading from the Gospel of John, Daniel's head tilted slowly to the right. Too slowly. As if resisting an opposing force. The air grew noticeably colder. Condensation formed faintly on the chapel windows, despite the heating system running. Daniel's eyes shifted past Father Antonio's shoulder. And for the first time, Father Antonio saw it. Not a full form, not a body, but a distortion in the air behind the altar of the chapel. A vertical darkness that did not align with any shadow cast in the room. It was subtle, almost transparent, but it absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Father Antonio's voice faltered for less than a second. That was enough. Daniel smiled, not widely, not theatrically, just enough to suggest recognition. "It's here," he whispered. The distortion deepened, and the candle near the tabernacle extinguished itself without smoke. Total silence filled the chapel. No one moved. Then Daniel's voice spoke again, layered and calm. "You turned your back too many times." Father Antonio stepped forward, lifting the crucifix firmly. "In the name of Christ, you will depart." The distortion shifted. It did not vanish. It moved. From behind the altar to directly behind Father Antonio. Close enough that he felt the same pressure he had sensed weeks earlier in the sanctuary. Heavy, breathing, waiting. And as the priest began the formal command of expulsion, Daniel's eyes rolled upward and a single tear ran down his cheek. But he was not the one crying.